Welcome. My name is Shauna McGrath. I'm a counseling astrologer, and this is your weekly astrology forecast for August 24th through 30th. I would like to chat with you about the astrology of this week in the way that I would chat with a client of mine if we were doing a personal session. So I want to begin our time here by asking you what's going on with you right now. What would you like to get out of this time? Leave me a comment and let me know. So the title of this video is Mars-Saturn. Mars will be exactly squaring Saturn this week. So this is a transit that's been building up, and we'll focus on that for the bulk of this session, but because it is a very important transit and it's something that is a more long-term transit and one that people tend to experience is quite challenging. So I have some tips for you to really work with this energy to reduce the amount of challenge and to actually make the most out of it. So first, before we get to Mars-Saturn, we do have a first quarter moon in the sign of Sagittarius. So this is happening on Tuesday. Now, first quarter moons are a time of action, of pivoting, of maybe changing your focus or redirecting your focus, or really putting your energy full force into whatever it is that you're focused on. The first quarter moon has been known as a crisis of action. It can be where you question what it is that you're focused on right now. So this can be within the context of what you're working on within this week or within this month, maybe even the entire year. It really depends on what's happening within your birth chart. If this were aspecting an important point in your birth chart, it's going to be more about the big picture things for you. But regardless, for all of us, it is this time of assessing where our focus is. So I would make note of that day on your calendar, especially Monday or Tuesday, to take a bit of time to assess where you would like to redirect your energy, or if there's something that needs more of your attention than others. So that's that. The other aspect, the main aspect that's happening this week is we have Mars squaring Saturn. Now Mars is in Aries, and Mars is about to station retrograde in September. So this is important to know because this means that Mars is moving very slow. And so any transits that Mars makes are going to be for a longer period of time, and their effects are amplified. Their effects are more important, so we want to pay attention. So Mars is about action, taking initiative, self-assertiveness. It can also be associated with anger and frustration, even rage. It's like agitation. So we can see how Mars can be helpful in standing up for yourself, asserting yourself. Being direct is a Mars thing. Confrontation is a Mars symbol, and confrontation can be acted out in a way that is helpful to you, or sometimes it can be detrimental as well. So I want you to keep that in mind. Now, Saturn is about boundaries, restrictions, limitations on your time. It is also about heightened responsibility and not being able to take shortcuts. So I think that's really important with Saturn, is that whenever we have an aspect involving Saturn, it's super important to keep the big picture and the long game in mind, because shortcuts are typically not encouraged or even possible when we have a Saturn aspect. And so when we have these two together, Mars is about action, initiation, it's also about doing things and getting an immediate result, like immediate gratification. Like I do the thing and then I see a result. Now this is very different than Saturn, which Saturn is about doing a thing and doing it for the devotion of the thing, and knowing that you're putting in little pieces of effort every day that is going to build up over time. So those are two very different things, right? Immediate gratification versus long-term gratification. So we already have a bit of tension or a bit of conflict between the symbols of these two planets, and it being a square. So we know this is a square because these planets are they're in the same mode, but different elements. So Mars is in the sign of Aries and Saturn is in the sign of Capricorn. And so what does all of this mean in practical terms? So I posted on Instagram sort of a list of recommendations for Mars-Saturn, and I'll link that in the video on when I post it to YouTube. But essentially, this can look like a few different things for you depending on what's happening in your life. I'm just going to throw out some of the symbols. So it can look like delays in progress. It can look like trying really hard to and being very motivated to get results and to be successful, but feeling like things are taking too long, or there's something that is blocking you or someone that is blocking you, and it can be very frustrating. Frustration, agitation, because of the lack of success. That is something that is very common. Now, the other part of this is that when you are really aligning with the Saturn energy, and even just remembering that things are going to take a bit longer, especially around achievement, success, and the structure of your life, like especially business things. But I think just anything, like Saturn is also about feeling a sense of accomplishment. So all of that is going to take a little bit longer, and you may feel like it's impossible, or it may feel like there's not a lot of options. And so I want you to know that that is normal. And I find that for many people that I work with, that just knowing that, especially if they're having a Saturn transit, for example, I hosted a new moon class this week, and nearly every person in the class was having a Saturn transit. So we talked about that. We talked about why, and all of those people tended to feel like things were, like they were being held back in some way, or things weren't working just right. And this is the nature of Saturn. So we do need to have a certain element of patience. And this does not mean don't take action. This is the edge that we need to work when we're talking about Mars-Saturn. It is very important for you to continue doing the things that lead you to success, doing the things that are going to improve your life, whatever that looks like for you right now. The trick is doing it and knowing that this is for something that is bigger than just right now. So again, I posted several like very specific action items on Instagram about this. I'll post it in the YouTube video. You may have to scroll back. I think it was like a few weeks ago, but I was surprised. I wrote it for myself, and because I have a lot of changes that are happening this fall. I'm starting my master's program and a lot of other really exciting things. And so I wrote out this list for myself to stay focused. And a lot of you found some value in that as well, which was really heartwarming. So I'll link to that. The other things that are happening this week are Venus opposite Jupiter and Pluto. So Venus is about relationships, it's about attraction, it's about love, beauty, even finances as well. So when Venus is opposite Jupiter, this is about like really craving the things that you find attractive, and not even as just attractive, but that you find calming, and that you're like, yes, like I need this in my life. Pluto is about power, control, and even obsession to a certain extent. So I would say with Venus, Jupiter, and Venus, Pluto here, this is a reminder to not overdo things. There can be a tendency towards throwing caution to the wind and overdoing either spending or throwing yourself into a relational situation where it's too much, too fast. So I would just notice that, use a little bit of temperance there. The other aspects that are happening this week are Mercury will be trine Jupiter and Uranus. So I'm excited about this because this feels like we get a little bit of mental reworking or a mental shakeup, so to speak. Now, Mercury is in Virgo, which is very good for us because Mercury, the mind, functions very well in Virgo. Virgo is the one of the signs that Mercury rules in addition to Gemini. And so already the mind element here, the thinking, the communication, this is helpful to us. Mercury is also associated with business and commerce and technology, like all of our, modern world businessy kind of things. Now, when Mercury is making an aspect to Jupiter, this is about big ideas coming through. This is about luck and synchronicity. Uranus is about these flashes of insight. It's also about change and an unexpected change coming from seemingly out of nowhere. So I think that this week, there's the overall feeling tone is that it may feel like you're being challenged or like you're being restricted in some way. At the same time, we do have this ally with Mercury being a help or a support for you around reworking your ideas, or maybe even because Jupiter is involved, reworking your belief system. So it'd be really interesting for you to do some work around mindset, like that's a classic symbol of Mercury, trine Jupiter and Uranus, is working with your mindset and what is the story that you're telling yourself about what's happening right now. So I just said a lot of information. I want to take a pause and see how all of that lands with you. Leave me a comment and let me know. And I'll check the comments on the live feed here. So nice to see you all here. One of our listeners says, Danelle says, I feel like negative people in my life are standing out or pushing out. I think it's an interesting way to say it. So I've noticed when there are Saturn transits, especially when a person is having a Saturn transit to an important personal planet, or a Saturn return or a Saturn square, they can start to become very aware of the people in their life who are not a beneficial influence to them. And so I think that's really something that's really important to look at, especially this week for all of us. But again, especially if you are having a Saturn transit, to look at where you're becoming aware that someone or a certain situation is not a good fit for you. And this is not to say that that person or that situation is bad. I think that that can be a common Saturn assumption. It's just that maybe it's not a good fit for you anymore. And this is an opportunity to accept that and to make the decisions to create a life that is sustainable for you. Because if you feel bad after being around someone, that is not sustainable for you, especially if you are a highly sensitive person, which I know many of you are. All right, so I have 3 tips for you. Jeffrey says, hitting home with it all, lots of little frustrations. Yeah, totally. So I'm also thinking too, working with this Venus in Cancer opposite Jupiter-Pluto, that may be an interesting way to work with the little frustrations, because it's an opposition, which is a little bit challenging, but it is still Venus-Jupiter. So what are the things that you find beauty in that may help to calm? I think that in addition to just knowing that the frustration is normal right now. All right, so 3 tips for you. Tip number 1 is to persevere. Persevere. And I really want for you to continue to do the things that you know are good for you, that you know are going to improve your life. And I say that because I think that I've noticed that when we have a Saturn transit, Again, especially if it's a personal planet or if you're having a Saturn aspect Saturn, that it can feel hopeless. It can feel like you have no options, or it can feel like the only options that you have are not desirable. And so I want you to know that this is normal, but this is temporary, this feeling of restriction. So I want you to persevere. That is tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to proceed slowly and thoroughly. So this is all Mars-Saturn work. It's really important that you continue to take action and that you continue to look at the ways in which you can have power or control over your life. Now, this is important. I really want you to take in, I've said this in a very specific way. So Saturn is also about power, control, authority, and autonomy over your own life. Now, when we feel like we have no options or we feel restricted, it's very common to try to gain control or power in some way. And this is good. But sometimes we can do this in a way that is not life-inducing, that is actually more restricting or that is detrimental. So I want you to focus on what you can do for yourself. It's important to avoid trying to control other people or a situation that you ultimately have no control over. For example, you have no control over other people's emotions or opinions about you. So we're going to leave that alone. That is not your territory. What is in your territory is to do things that make you feel good, like making sure that you are eating well, that you're moving your body, that you're having the space to process your thoughts, that you have the situations that bring you a sense of satisfaction, that you do something that makes you feel good about you. That's another Saturn thing, is that you need to feel good about yourself. So I digress. That's tip number 2, is to proceed slowly and thoroughly. Tip number 3 is to keep an open mind. And so this is working with that Mercury, trine, Jupiter, and Uranus. This is a more subtle aspect because it's a trine and because it's Mercury. So the trines are easy to overlook because it just comes so naturally. This is true in your birth chart, and this is true in the transits as well. When someone has a trine and we're looking at it in your birth chart, it's often something where the person is like, oh my gosh, I'm really good at that, but I never think about it because it's like, oh, isn't everyone like this? So that's kind of the vibe of Mercury trine Jupiter. So I want you to keep an open mind and notice where ideas come to you spontaneously, because those are of value and those can be very helpful when you feel like you don't have a lot of options. So I think it's very beautiful that this is all coming in together. Now, some of you may leave this video feeling like you have more questions than answers, which is very understandable because astrology is deep and complex. Life is deep and complex. So with more time, I can show you how to work with the astrology to connect and align with yourself better and to experience a deeper understanding of what's going on with you and how to move through your life with more purpose and more joy in your work in your life. So if you want help with that, please send me an email and we can talk about setting up a session with you. I am wishing you a wonderful week, sending you lots of love and wishes of safety, security, comfort, and health. Bye for now.